Thank you for tuning in to the Into the Classroom series produced by Mental Health California, sponsored by Blue Shield of California's Blue Sky Initiative.
Welcome to Into the Classroom, which is a student mental health multimedia series produced by Mental Health California. I'm your host, Conrad Crump, affectionately known as Coach Crump, and today's topic is on navigating isolation and disconnect and supporting students in a changing world. The isolation and disconnect that is experienced by teens and college students in the wake of societal changes, particularly the COVID-19 pandemic, have all had a significant impact on their well-being. During this discussion, we'll offer ideas and strategies for youth to overcome these challenges, along with guidance for schools, families, and communities to provide support to young people. If any of us has been feeling isolated and disconnected, we must remember we are not alone. Now, there are resources to support us on our journeys toward connection, reconnection, and resilience. Today, we have the wonderful pleasure of speaking with Luz Guzman. Luz is a licensed marriage and family therapist at hearyou.org who supports Latinx youth and their families. She addresses stress, anxiety, and depression in college students and self-esteem and self-compassion concerns. Luz also supports parents and family members navigating complex trauma and various community systems. Welcome, Luz. How are you?
Hi, well, I'm doing well. Thank you for having me.
Yes, we're glad to have you. And we're also joined today by a couple of our youth guests who I'd like to introduce at this time. Firstly, we have with us Randy Rosemond from Texas Southern University. Hey there, Randy. How's it going?
Hey, everybody. I'm doing great. Happy to be here.
Wonderful. We also have with us Lucy Lebec from El Cerrito High School. Hey, Lucy. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you for having me.
Wonderful. And we're also joined by Erica Pham from Miraloma High School. What's up, Erica? How's it going?
Hi, I'm doing good. Excited to be here.
Wonderful. And last but certainly not least, we are also joined by Sophia Toledo from William J. Pete Knight High School. Hey there, Sophia.
Hello. How you doing?
Pretty good. Now, before we get into our discussion, I'd actually like to ask our clinician, Luz, if she can give us some insights into the physical and mental health impacts of feeling isolated and disconnected. Luz?
Yes. So, with isolation and feeling disconnected, we notice a lot of folks have become depressed, less likely to talk to people that they care about. We've noticed a lot of anxiety pop up, lots of behaviors of like repetitiveness. And also people not doing the things that they enjoyed. So some of the physical symptoms can be sleeping a lot, being, just kind of sluggish, even if you're not sleeping, um, doing repetitive behaviors like I talked about earlier, and also just sort of worrying a lot, like having a lot of thinking, being a lot in our heads, and then not doing those activities that we enjoy.
Wow. Yeah, no, thanks a lot for that, Luz. That's some great insight. And now I'd like to ask some of our youth that we have here today, just by a show of hands, has anyone here dealt with, or are you currently dealing with, feelings of isolation or feelings of disconnect? Okay, so I see a couple hands here. Lucy, can you maybe kind of elaborate on what some of those feelings are and what you're experiencing?
Well, it's like a feeling of not really having a place to go. I would say my isolation and disconnect comes from life transitions. I'm going to college next year, and this is just kind of like a transition zone between a new environment and my old one with people who I've been with for 13 years now. And it's really hard to feel like this is going to end and that there's going to be light at the end of the tunnel, and that this, like, being stuck here with these people will not be forever. And it can be really isolating to not really have things here.
Wow. Yeah, no, thanks for that. Real true honesty. I appreciate that. And I'm sure there may be some young folks in the audience that may be feeling the same way as well. Erica, I saw you raise your hand also. Would you care to elaborate or talk to us about some of those feelings that you're having?
Yeah, so I definitely felt some isolation and disconnect, especially making the transition from middle school to high school. Um, for me, it was right during the COVID pandemic when I was making that transition, and I was also going from private school to public school. So going from such a small environment to like a huge environment with so many new classmates was definitely challenging, and it stretched me in a lot of ways. So I think that going to new environments and not really knowing like where you fit in, and not having, for example, during COVID, not having those just natural ways of getting to meet new people, I think that can create some isolation and disconnect, especially when like our schedules during that time were so repetitive.
Yeah, no, so true. So very true. And thanks for that, Erica, just for being real transparent there. So let's go ahead and go a little bit further into our conversation, and let's look at our slide presentation. And let's look at some statistics on isolation and disconnect among young people. According to a survey that was conducted by the American Psychological Association, 61% of college students reported feeling lonely, and 45% felt that they did not have a sense of belonging on campus. In another study published in the Journal of Adolescent Health, 30% of high school students were consistently lonely, with young girls being more likely to experience loneliness than boys, more so than our young male counterparts, which I'm kind of curious about. I'm here, I'm on a into the classroom session right now with a bunch of young women, and they vary in ages. And I'm just curious, would anyone maybe by a show of hands or want to raise their hand to maybe tell me why they think that the young women and young ladies are feeling more of that feeling of loneliness more than young boys? I see your hand went up first, Lucy. Go right ahead.
I definitely think it has something to do with social media. Social media definitely has a bigger impact on women than men because of the standards. It's so easy to fall into the cycle of, oh, wow, she has a perfect body. She's so skinny. Why don't I look like that? And just like the repetitiveness of that. And it's just very isolating to have social media and to see people out and about without you and to be feeling FOMO and stuff. It's definitely does not help our mental health.
Wow. Wow. No, thanks a lot for that. That's some real true insight. And we're gonna, kind of talk about that a little bit later on, but so true. The standards are truly not equal. So let's go ahead and I actually want to ask another question. To our college student that's here, Randy, why might a college student feel that loneliness or feel that disconnect? And I ask you because you're at a school that's away from home. So can you talk to me a little bit about maybe some of the things that you felt and why a college student might feel lonely?
Yes, I think in college it can definitely be a little different because, especially going out of state, like in my case, you're supposed to be prioritizing your school because it's for a whole different like ball game now. You're transitioning into your career soon, hopefully. So it's a lot of more seriousness. It's a lot more responsibilities. while also battling not being like the same environment that you've always been in, tackling a different comfort zone or like stepping out of your own, because it's a lot of changes with not being able to see the people that you call friends or family every day or as much as you would. So it's just a lot of transition while also having to take everything a lot more seriously. And also being able to balance different parts of your life as well, because you're transitioning into a young adult. So it's a lot. But, you know, when you surround yourself in a good environment, it'll work itself out.
Very good. Thanks for that. Thank you very much for that, Randy. And, you know, Sophia, I'm not trying to leave you out. So I'm curious to know your thoughts. You know, any thoughts that you might have on anything that we've talked about, like the percentage of college students feeling lonely, or even maybe yourself considering when you do go off to college, you know, how those feelings might come about and what you might be able to do about them?
Yeah, so it makes a lot of sense that college students would feel that way because, I mean, you're kind of separating yourself from the people you used to know in high school or middle school. Because in middle school, you would go, usually, I mean, for me, I went along with the people to high school. And so I bet everyone's choosing different colleges and stuff, and they have their own paths, careers that they want to do. And so the fact that they're moving to college, it makes it like a big difference because you don't know anybody. I mean, it's really rare that you find people from high school, but like most of the time you don't know anybody. And I feel like it's very lonely for them because like, and especially if the college that they went to is far away from home, that's even worse because they're like, oh no, my parents were, they're back over there and I'm here. And so like, I feel like it's very hard for them. So props to college students because it's hard.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I hear you. I mean, being away from home and establishing a brand new social network, being in a new environment can certainly, you know, make a person feel disconnected, make them feel isolated, question where they belong, where they kind of fit in. So all of that makes total sense. But let's go ahead and move on to our next slide. So now another study, the National Alliance on Mental Illness, or NAMI for short, stated that 75% of mental health conditions begin by the age of 24. Now, this highlights the vulnerability of young people to mental health challenges that can contribute to those feelings of isolation that we talked about. Let's go ahead and move on to our next slide. Now, the Center for Disease Control, or the CDC, has reported that suicide is the second leading cause of death among individuals aged 10 through 34. Now, feelings of isolation and disconnection can also contribute to the risk of suicidal ideation and behaviors among young people. Now, let's go ahead and go on to slide 5. Now, as we talk about the impact of COVID-19, I think it was Erica that kind of brought it up a little bit. You know, we all were going through a complete huge transition that was brand new for all of us. You know, social distancing measures. Students had to go into remote learning spaces. And really, all of us had to limit our social interactions. You know, that definitely disrupted our usual support systems. And it also increased those feelings of loneliness. You know, that lack of in-person connection and the shift to a virtual platform made it very challenging for students to establish and maintain meaningful relationships. Another study done by the CDC showed that 61% of young adults aged 18 through 24 reported symptoms of anxiety or depression during the COVID-19 pandemic. Now, I would say that's nothing to be kind of like alarmed about now, because given that we were all going through what we were going through, it makes sense for folks to have those feelings. I'll go ahead and ask our clinician, Luz, if you can maybe talk to us about, you know, the significance of COVID-19 and how it really shaped young folks and, you know, had an impact on their mental health.
Yeah. Just like you said, right? We've noticed that the impact is huge, right? It's through all folks, all ages. We've noticed that people are about half a year behind social emotionally. It's hard to jump back, right, on what it's like to be social, on navigating all of the different things that we have to do. Our routines have changed, right? On the flip, they changed during COVID, and now they're changing again when, it's sort of like back to business. But what exactly is that? So we've noticed it's definitely been very, very challenging, sort of just navigating like what life after being isolated is. Lots of social anxiety, trying to figure out, how do we create these relationships again now that we're not in front of a screen? And so, it's baby steps and sort of figuring out, right? Like, how do we find places where we feel comfortable and where we belong, and we are feeling those sense of belonging, and connection, really, like how can we find connection in a place that feels comfortable and authentic for everybody?
No, very good. Thanks a lot for that, Luz. That kind of segues actually to our next slide, because when we talk about mental health aspects of isolation and disconnect, we know that young people can have feelings of negative self-perception, have feelings of low self-esteem, and fear of judgment. Additionally, there's the stigma around mental health that can further isolate individuals, particularly young folks. And, they might be hesitant to share their experiences, or they might be hesitant to seek support. So these are all just, ways in which we know that young folks can be impacted by this. And another piece that we kind of talked about a little bit was social media. I know that during the pandemic, a lot of folks kind of went to social media to try to find those connections, but also realized there were a lot of other things happening with social media, kind of what I believe it was Lucy talked about earlier. So, looking at just the ways in which folks compare with each other and so on and so forth, like these are all ways that have impacted our young folks as it relates to their mental health, and just something to certainly be aware of. So let's go ahead and go further in our conversation and go on to our next slide. So as we go on and look at marginalized youth, we know that marginalized youth certainly face discrimination, they face racism, as well as systemic inequalities, which can all contribute to those feelings of being isolated from the general population. These young folks might also experience microaggressions, exclusion, as well as a lack of representation, which can further exacerbate feelings of disconnection. We must address these systemic issues and create inclusive environments that value diversity and promote equity. Now let's go ahead and go on to our next slide. Now, as we go further into this topic of isolated and disconnected youth and the behaviors that, are often found by our young folks, I'd like to ask, let me go ahead and ask you, Sophia, can you maybe talk about some of the behaviors that a young person might exhibit if they are feeling disconnected or isolated?
Yeah, I feel like they would lock themselves in the room because honestly, I've done that before. I've locked myself in my room, and then, like, if I'm bored, I would find whatever I could find in the pantry and eat snacks. I'm not gonna lie. And so I would also watch a movie and just like distance myself away from everyone. And then I like honestly, I'd also low-key kind of have anger issues. And so I'd be like, no, leave me alone. I want to be alone. And then yeah, you just don't want to be around anyone at that moment. It's just like very self-isolating. You just want to be all cuddled up in their blankets and by yourself in your room watching movies and just like rotting in your room. But that's not good golf. That's not good.
No, I hear you. I mean, it's true. I mean, that certainly is some of the behaviors that I would anticipate a young person might engage in, especially just being alone, putting themselves in their room. So it's something, if folks are in the audience and, you have young folks in your lives, if your parents are caretakers and you're seeing some of those signs, it might be time for a check-in. If you're seeing that your young person is, locking themselves in their room or exhibiting some anger issues, it might be, a moment to really kind of look at ways to support that young person to help get them out of those feelings. Again, some of those behaviors might include social withdrawal, decreased participation in activities, academic decline, all of these different changes. I know that Luz talked about sleep earlier as well, changes in sleep patterns, as well as substance use. This may also be something that young folks might rely on to help, alleviate those feelings of isolation and disconnect. So it's certainly important to recognize these signs and provide appropriate support and intervention. Now, when we talk about support and intervention, now we know that schools also play a huge role in this. Now, one of the ways in which schools can support our young folks is, by facilitating the formation of peer support groups, as well as mentoring programs to help foster social connections and provide a sense of community. Additionally, we know that schools can also offer accessible mental health services, including counseling and support groups, to address those emotional well-being of students that are in their care, as well as helping those students navigate their feelings. And also, schools can help by facilitating the formation of support groups, again, to really make sure that young folks are focusing on being able to be around each other and being able to support one another, talking about their own mutual experiences. So there are a number of different ways schools can support. Additionally, schools can, create campaigns around anti-bullying. They can create campaigns around inclusion to make sure that students feel welcome and make sure that they feel that they too are a part of the entire academic environment that they find themselves in. So let's go ahead and move on to our next slide. Now, we know that family is also crucially important when it comes to supporting youth. Family can support young folks by encouraging open and honest conversations about their feelings and their experiences. Also, validating their feelings of isolation and letting them know that they are not alone is another way to offer empathy and understanding. Additionally, families can support their youth by seeking professional help from therapists and counselors who specialize in adolescent mental health. So we know it's important for families to support youth, but I want to hear it from some of our young folks. So let me get you in here, Erica. Why might it be important for families to support their students, their young folks that are in their care, whether they're caregivers and so on and so forth?
Yeah, I think it's super important that our families support us because I think our families know us the best. They know us when we were really little and they know us now as we're growing and they know us in like all the aspects of our life, or like they should in that kind of regard. So I think that the fact that we're looking up to our parents as well, we kind of sort of model our lives after them. And so if we have their support, I feel like it gives us that support and it knocks off like the isolation that we would normally feel if we didn't have anybody to support us. So I think that's why it's super important for families to be there.
Awesome. That's a great response. I appreciate that, especially about knowing you the best. That is so true. Watching, young folks grow up and watching them develop, families kind of have an insight, a closer perspective, more so than schools do. So that's something to also keep in mind. Folks in our audience, you know your young people best. So, keep that in mind in terms of how you might be able to support them. So let's go ahead and move on to our next slide. So when we talk about support, clinical and holistic solutions are options as well. Now, these clinical solutions may include therapy, medication, or other evidence-based interventions. Now, holistic measures can complement clinical approaches and include activities such as exercise, mindfulness, creative outlets, and social interactions. Now, encouraging young people to engage in hobbies, join clubs or organizations, and participate in community activities can also help them build connections and combat feelings of isolation. And, when we're talking about some of these clinical and holistic solutions, we have our clinician here, and I'd love to hear some feedback on ways that our young folks might be able to find, support through some of these methods? Luz, can you talk to us about that?
Yes. Um, Community is key, right? And so I think whether you are seeking some therapeutic support from a therapist or a school counselor, finding someone that you trust, right? Whether that's at school, at home, hopefully in both places, someone that you can go to, right? So that they can also see the signs, right? Because we spend most of our time either at school or at home, right? It's like half and half. And so that in both of those places, having people that you feel comfortable with. Joining clubs, things that you're interested in, community events, things like that, and trying some of those apps. There's apps for meditation. There's guided imagery apps that can help decrease some of these symptoms. And they work very nicely if you're doing therapy or seeing a school counselor, group therapy. Group therapy is great because you're in community, right? And so you're with some of those peers, and that can be very powerful. To hear what someone else is going through can be very powerful and therapeutic.
Wow, no, that's so true. And thanks a lot for that, Luz. Definitely want to make sure that community is involved in that process, whether that's a community of one other person, or a community of your family or friends, or even, support from your school. Certainly want to make sure that young folks are in community and that they're not alone. That is so important. Now, we know that establishing healthy routines is certainly a positive way for young people to support themselves. So before we go into it, I want to do a quick round robin and ask all of our young folks here, what are some of your routines that you use to help yourself navigate school and not feel disconnected and not feel isolated? And I'll start with you first, Randy.
So a routine that I've been getting into is trying to cook a meal for myself. So like it's good to eat 3 meals a day, regardless. But like either I'm cooking breakfast or lunch or dinner instead of like going to the caf or getting takeout or something like that. I've also incorporating exercising and working out because I live next to a gym. So I've been doing that whenever I can because like I have class and homework a lot, but at least twice a week. It's been cool to keep that in my routine.
Awesome. Thanks for that, Randy. And how about you, Sophia?
So one of the things I have in my routine is marching band practice after school, and we basically our teacher makes us like run around, like she makes us do exercise laps, and then obviously after the warm ups we play our instruments, and then like we practice the music, and then after school I come home, I do my homework, and then I call my friends. I like to call my friends, and then we play games sometimes if I have the time. Sometimes I still have to do my homework and I stay up until like 12 a.m. because I just have that much. But I do like talking to my friends because I feel like it gets me like, I don't know, it just gets me motivated to talk to people. It's just, it gets my mind out of stuff. And so I feel like talking to my friends is like a big factor, a big part of my day.
Thanks for that. How about you, Lucy?
Yeah, I can never compromise on sleep. I need 7 hours at least of sleep a night. If I get 6, I am yawning all day. I am not focused. Like, I need my 7 hours of sleep. And I love going to the HIIT gym. I try to go at least 3 times a week. I also go rock climbing, which is super fun. And I also try to reach out when I'm upset. And it's hard. It's really hard to reach out and to, like put yourself out there, but it's worth it, I think, in my opinion.
No, that's great. So far I've heard sleep, food, talking with friends, and exercise. Erica, what is in your routine that you use to help support yourself?
I think to add on to like exercising, obviously, and talking to my friends, at school and also like after school, I take part in a lot of like volunteer activities, also like community based leadership activities. And I think having those like activities set aside in my routine in my schedule each week allows me like a place where I can just like go and do work or help other people or do stuff like that. And it's not like as much pressure on myself, but like it's just a thing for me to do that I can always like turn to do, and it makes me feel productive as well. And then just like another thing I like to do is after school, me and my friend just like hang out in the parking lot and we just like talk and we just like give that time to ourselves to chill out. And I think that part of our routine is definitely like kind of interesting, but it's definitely super fun every single day.
Wow. Well, thanks a lot for that, Erica. All of you all have provided some great tips for some of the folks that are in the audience listening today. I really want to take the time to just thank each of you for helping out our discussion. A huge thank you to you, Randy. A huge thank you to you, Erica. A huge thank you to you too, Sophia, as well as a huge thank you to you too, Lucy. And of course, we want to give a huge thank you to Luz just for providing just such a great analysis on this topic from a clinical perspective. So thank you all so much. I'd also like to thank you, our audience, for joining Into the Classroom, which is a production of Mental Health California. Please be sure to visit us at mentalhealthca.org. And if you'd like to access health and mental wellness topics for boys and men of color, please visit our signature initiative at brotherbewell.com. Also, be sure to subscribe to our blog. Lastly, I'd like to give a huge thank you to our sponsor, Blue Shield of California's Blue Sky Initiative, which promotes access to mental health support. You can learn all about their program at bluesky.blueshieldca.com. With that, I'm your host, Conrad Crump, aka Coach Crump. Until next time, take good care of yourselves.